Well, welcome to NMRAX for December 2021. Geez, I tell you what, it feels like it was yesterday we started doing these. But anyway, we're here at the December show, and today we've got Jacob Wright from up north Canada. Look, I noticed behind him the globe has spun round to an appropriate country that's being displayed. So, yeah, that looks good. How you doing there, Jacob?
Pretty good.
You all ready for Christmas?
Yeah.
Well, that's good to hear. That's good to hear. Anything on the horizon? Anything new coming, you reckon?
Well, we're about to start construction on my land, so that's gonna be fun.
Oh, that's good. That's good. Jacob's going to host our first guest, so I'll. You don't want to hear me ramble on. You're going to hear more of that later on. So I'll disappear. And Jacob, welcome, and it's over to you.
Thank you for the introduction, Martin. Our first presenter has been involved with model railroading all of his life. As a youngster, he and his father built a typical 4x8 layout suspended from the ceiling, which spent more time suspended in midair, eventually building a small N-scale layout that slid under his bed. Joining the Navy, he ended up in San Diego, where he discovered the Model Railroad Museum at Balboa Park and became involved with the San Diego Society of N-Scale, doing lots of scenery and structure work. With the help of club member Chuck Hart, he built the first version of the Deep River Southern, a small L-shaped N-scale layout that shared the room with his daughter. The layout came part of a larger layout that had operations designed into. Moved to Oklahoma, he gave a fresh start to his current multi-level N-scale layout that has been featured in many magazines and is part of local layout design and operations weekend and Tulsa line op sessions. For modeling a cement plant, please welcome Dave Salmon. Thank you for being with us today.
Thanks, Jacob. Appreciate that. So hopefully you can see my screen there. So I gave this presentation a couple months ago at our local convention, and Speed has been bugging me to give a presentation with NMRAX, and so this was the time to do it. So I appreciate the invite and for allowing me to come on and talk about it. So as you can see, this is the scene that we're going to eventually get to talk about, and it's the Calaveras Cement Plant, the Hastings plant on the Deep River Southern. So as I get through this presentation, there's going to be lots of photographs that are not of the Calaveras Cement, and they're actually prototype ones or model ones that I've downloaded off the internet. I could not tell you where half the references came from, but they were good references. I've saved them, and I take no credit for them, but I'm going to be using them in this presentation.
Dave, can I quickly interrupt?
Absolutely.
Can you drag that message to the bottom of the screen?
Oh, yes, I can.
Thank you.
No, thanks, Speed. So this is one of the views looking into the cement plant, the main plant, and the backdrop. Just kind of overall seeing what we're going to be talking about. So where did it all start for me? And that was when I lived in Northern California. We used to go up to the Sierras all the time and just drive around the old gold mining towns and stuff. And going down one of the back roads, I come across this, looked like a railroad bridge and had Calaveras cement over it. But it had been planked over, so it wasn't a railroad bridge now, but it sure looked like it could have been. So followed the road around, eventually got to where there was an old cement plant. So doing a little research, and Southern Pacific had a branch line called the Kentucky House branch that went up to San Andreas to where the cement plant was. So I did a little more research into it and come to find out that bridge was built to railroad standards, but it never actually hauled a rail car on it. It was a quarry road where they brought all the quarry rocks into the cement plant to be processed, but it sure looked like a railroad bridge and sure captured a great scene. And so that's where it all started for me, that I started doing a little bit of research on cement and figured that'd be a good industry to model on the railroad. And so Southern Pacific had a branch line. I could actually model it as a branch line just to go up and service it. So why a cement plant? Well, it's a large industry with multiple spots. Several different types of cars can be switched. Cement plants are great for a linear operation. You can do lots of building and details. You can cram a lot of trackage in a small area. And for me, it was a possible additional operating spot on my layout. You know, it could be built as a standalone switching layout or incorporate into a larger layout at a later time if you wanted to do it. So just a little bit about how cement's made. And you got a quarry, we're going to be getting the rocks. It goes into material storage. And from there, it goes into feed bins where it's going to go ahead and get crushed. And then it goes into a rotary kiln. Gets heated up to like 2,500 to 3,000 degrees. And then it makes these things called clinkers, goes into storage. We mill that. We're going to add a little gypsum, some other components on it so we can control it. And then we're going to ship that out by truck, or for us as model railroaders, we're going to put that in rail cars or put it into bags or even barrels, I found out, to ship out to the end user. I am no means an expert on the subject, just done a little research on it and find it very fascinating. This is another image I found recently. It kind of breaks it down just a little bit smaller, just with the process of grounding the rock up and crushing it and then running it through the mill and then into storage. The making of Portland cement, the material contains appropriate amounts of calcium compounds, silica, alumina, and iron oxides that are crushed and screened and placed in a rotary kiln. The ingredients used in this process are typically materials such as limestone, sandstone, marl, shale, iron, clay, and fly ash. The kiln itself represents a large horizontal pipe with a diameter of anywhere 10 to 15 feet and a length of 300 feet or more. One end is raised slightly. The raw mix is placed at the high end, and the kiln actually rotates, and the material slowly moves towards the lower end. The flame jets are at the lower end and shooting in, and like I said, 2,700 to 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit. These are some examples. This is actually the ones up at the Calabria Cement up at San Andreas. A couple of them whenever they were under construction, and then whenever they expanding it. See that it originally had 2 rotary kilns, and a third rotary kiln was added to it at a later date. So in the process, the heat dries off all the calcines, the chemically combined water and carbon dioxide from the raw materials, and forms a new compound, a tricalcium silicate, a dicalcium silicate, tricalcium aluminate, and tetracalcium alumina ferrite. So what I found was interesting, for each ton of material that goes into the feed into the kiln, 2/3 of it actually comes out, the discharge out of as clinkers, a product that can be used. So there's only 1/3 that goes to waste. This clinker is in the form of marble-sized pellets. And kind of an example over on the right, kind of what it looks like. From there, it's ground and finally ground Portland cement. During that process, they're going to add a small amount of gypsum to control the cement set or the rate of hardening that it's going to be used. So some of the prototypes, when I was in the San Diego Suns, we used to go up and rail fan Cajon Pass and stuff. And so I got a bunch of photographs of this cement plant that I took. Of course, in my younger days, I had my whopping Kodak 110 camera, or may have upgraded to a 120 at this time, but my pictures don't do it justice. Even though I got some really cool shots of some Kodachromes going through this area, this photograph that I downloaded off the internet gave me a better example of what I was looking for. It had a lot of piping and ducting. It had the silos for storage, and then the processing plant, and conveyors going everywhere. So it's got a lot of stuff that really appealed to me. We'll take a look at a couple examples that I've found over the years, downloaded off the internet. And this is in Creal, California. This is just outside of Mojave. Now, the Southern Pacific served this, and coming from the right lower is this track from the Southern Pacific that went down to Mojave. And from there is a kickback or a tail track that actually came into the plant. And then after that, there's another tail track that goes up to service where the coal is dumped. As you can see, it's a linear type operation. Makes for really good modeling because you got some switchback operations going into a prototype mill, and it's linear. You got covered hoppers coming in. You're gonna have some tank cars. You're gonna have some gypsum coming in, and then also coal to fire the thing. And then there's actually a diagram of the track showing where you got the switchbacks coming in, the kickbacks, and where the different cars were spotted at. Also, what's kind of unique in this setting was that there was a creek at the one end of the other tail track. So there was a small little trestle that it had to cross to get back into where the plant was. On the upper end where the coal dump, there's these two tracks, but I've never seen pictures of any cars stored on here. Most of the cars I've seen were pushed up on this track right here, loaded, and then gravity, they would be unloaded and come down here to where they could be picked up and then switched back into the yard and then shipped out. But this would make a fairly easy model that could be downsized to use on a home layout. This is another plant that was in Chanute, Kansas. When my son was playing college baseball, we traveled all over Kansas chasing him around. Of course, as we're chasing around, I'm looking at the old railroad sites, depots, and even cement plants like this. There's a large plant in Chanute. I went up to go do a little discovery, looking around, and it's still in operation today. The South Kansas and Oklahoma, the Skull serves it. And as you can see, it's still another linear type operation. It's got the silos, it's got the tracks, and it's the main track goes off to the left. There's a tail track that goes off to the right to bring the gypsum and the coal in for processing. So I found a track diagram that shows it. It shows the Ash Grove cement tracks. It has its own scale house for weighing cars whenever they leave. It has a bagging plant. On this diagram, it shows that it had one door that it was used for loading of bags and probably barrels at one time. And then the gypsum and coal is loaded on the back side, access through the tail track. So another scene that could be made into a very nice model railroad. Just going down the road a little bit further to another baseball game, I ran into another cement plant. So I started doing a little reading on this one. And this was up in Humboldt, Kansas. And what's kind of neat about the one in Humboldt, Kansas is that not only was it served by the ATSF on the right side, on the left side, the Missouri Pacific served it. So both railroads could feed cars into this. Now, it's not laid out truly as a linear type layout, but if you look at the track diagram, it could still be built and operated as a linear type layout. So I find it really interesting. You got two railroads servicing, and I'm sure they had their own plant switcher that switched. So you could actually build this plant by itself as a standalone layout. And you could actually represent both ends as staging tracks, feeding cars into this plant to switch. So you can make it a standalone switching layout and keep yourself busy for hours, bringing cars in and out and switching the plant out. Just lots of opportunities there. One of the gems whenever I started looking up cement plants was a friend of mine, Jay Hastings, was telling me about a cement plant that we have had at one time right here in Dewey, Oklahoma, which I didn't know anything about. So he was telling me about it, and he said he actually had a Sanborn map of the plant. So he gave me a copy of it, and man, there's another one. It's a linear of operation. It goes off to the left where it connected in with the Missouri, Kansas, Texas. And just a lot of operation. There was a track, it doesn't show it on this one here, but there was some tracks that went out to the quarry because they had their own railroad. And we'll see that in the next slide and some other images of the trains that brought the quarry rock into this one. So this kind of gave me a lot of inspiration because it's another linear. It's got the silos, it's got storage, and it's got the boiler room. So up on the top, we've got the boiler for powering the thing. We got storage, we have silos. Where the rotary kilns were located in this area. And this is where the bulk material came in from the quarry. So I had this image to go with, so I started using this in my planning. And then I found out there's actually a Facebook page for the Dewey Portland Cement Company. And they've got a newer track diagram shown on it. It's from 1948. And we can see a few things have changed in the plant. The cinder sheds, which just used to be right here, have expanded and they kind of moved the track a little bit. And there used to be some trackage over here that's been removed. This shows the quarry trackage where it comes in that goes up into an incline so that the rocks can be dumped into here and then goes into to be processed. The other thing I liked on this diagram was that it had side views, this showing the cinder storage, the grinding plant, and then the storage tanks. So it shows a side view of all this. And the lower side down here is a side view of this portion of it, where we have the crusher, goes into the wet storage, the boiler house, and then the rotary kilns. It's kind of unique. A lot of them just show a rotary kiln and it goes into the processing. There's a bunch of conveyors and it takes it to where it needs it to go. This plant just dropped into a big pit, and we'll see, I've got an image where they had a conveyor with a clamshell that lifted it from the dump and then took it over here. And then there was another transfer crane that would pick it up and put it into the storage area to where then it would go into sorting sheds. And this is the front of the Facebook page if anybody's interested. There's a lot of interesting shots on it, and they have a lot of good information about the plant and its operation over the years. In this photo, it was taken by a local historian, Edgar Weston, and it shows the concrete silos under construction of the plant. And the concrete silos would be the first in the world to house finished cement product. Here's a view looking down on the cement plant. And I like this view because it gives you a lot of ideas of what you can do to the roofs of your structures. Because in our model world, a lot of times we're standing up and we're looking down, and this is what we see are the rooftops, the access hatches, the vents, the piping and stuff. So it gives you a lot of modeling ideas that you can add to your thing. You also see on the right-hand side, the quarry tracks that come in here. The one track diagram only showed 3 tracks, but you can see there were another storage track, and they actually tied in because they were all standard gauge. And then the quarry went off to the right. It's about a mile down the road to where the quarry was. And we'll see down here shows 2 left-hand switches, but later in life they put a 3-way stub switch in there. And here's that view looking down. You can see the 3-way stub. Got a little steamer working the locos and these unique dumpers. If you wanted to model it, it gives you some great opportunity. And then the quarry track crossed the road and went off to the right, out into the distance, about a mile to where it was. And like I said, these cars were pushed up an incline and then put into the crusher to be dumped and processed. This was an advertisement that I found that showed the plant. So 160,000 barrels of storage and a packing plant that was there. And you can see we've got all these box cars coming in. Everything was shipped by box cars back in the day. And so they had 3 tracks that came in for loading. Here's some really good shots. It shows the 3 tracks where they would load the box cars, but you can also see the rooftops. All the ducting, the ladders, the vents, the piping, just lots of ideas that you can incorporate into your models. The question I had whenever I first saw this was, I could see the 3 tracks where they've got the unloading, the covers on them for loading them up. And I wasn't for sure because I knew we ship stuff out in bags and I didn't know the other process. Well, doing some research, I found out that this plant ship most of their product out in barrels. And then they've got some ads, and there are 75,000 barrels were going to be sent to the Sears and Roebuck Company in Chicago, or to Kansas City to direct the Sears there. That's 375 freight cars worth. So each freight car holds 200 barrels. And I found that in multiple references where it says 200 barrels of cement would be loaded into the box cars for shipping. And the plant had capacity of producing 2,500 barrels a day. So they did it in barrels. They also had a bagging plant. Shows a guy there filling the bags up, and a couple of examples of what some of the bags were in later days. This shows the clinker transfer. this little crane right here went along this concrete transfer, and there's the clamshell, and it would pick them up over on this side out of the rotary kiln and drop them on this side. And then the storage bin had another gantry that ran over with more clamshells, and they would move it over there for storage. In later years, you can see in this view, they expanded the storage to twice the length. You can see here's the power plant. So the coal cars would come in on this tail track and get shoved back in here and dumped to power the thing. We have our 3 tracks for loading that went the full length of it. And then we had a couple just storage tracks, various ones located around the area. It's just an image of one of the little switchers that they got around 1945 when it was brand new. You know, modeling the quarry is an option. It wasn't for me, but if you wanted to model the quarry, you could. And I mean, you get to use some secondhand steam locomotives, and then you can build some really cool looking steam cranes and different cranes for the modeling to represent them. We'll take a look at a few examples that I found off the internet, and most of these are going to be linear in design. A lot of the ones I've seen have got really neat aspects to them. This isn't a very big, there's not a lot of trackage here, but it's a big cement plant. Gives you a lot of opportunity to build a lot of big structures and really capture the feel of it. This is another one here. It's got all the elements for Rotary Kiln, the storage. This is a lower view, look more of a trackside view, prototypical view. Looking at this one here, really looks impressive. But all these here have got linear design, which really fit well with my design. You guys in HO, you guys got it made because at one time Walters offered a really nice HO kit that you could use. It is small in size for HO, but at least it's a well representative. Kind of wish in N scale they would have taken the same structure and just put different windows, put smaller N scale windows in it and an N scale covering thing. I think it would have been a closer to prototype cement plant. But not all of them have to be linear. I found this one on Mark Nolan's Lehigh Valley Railroad, and I just love his modeling work with all the details that go into it and conveyors going everywhere. And here's another view. He's not modeling a lot of area. It doesn't take up a huge area of his railroad, but it represents it very well. And there is a lot of operation. You certainly in that track work for moving a couple cars around. It's going to keep you busy for a while. Switching. It's compact, lots of trackage, got lots of buildings, so you get detail opportunities, and but it's still manageable at the same time. Something you can build in your lifetime. Found another one online, the Windsor and Midwestern club layout. I almost modeled this one exactly the way they did. I really like the way they had it laid out. And on this one, they had a capacity of 31 car spots at this one industry. So there's a lot of switching that takes place on this one area. Views showing what they modeled. Looks like they took the Walters kit and expanded it by two rotary kilns. It's spread out, but it's very prototypical in the way it looks. One of the storage bins. But if you don't have a lot of space, it doesn't mean you can't model a cement plant. Here at the Woodstock Railroad Club, what they've done was they've got a photograph on the backdrop representing most of the plant. And then they just got a conveyor going to silos so that you're not eating a lot of real estate up. I know my friend Mark Montre, he used to work on compressors and he had the contract at the local cement plant. So he's gone around taking tons of photographs, and whenever we get his railroad built, that's what his plan is to do, is to get those enlarged and use photographs on the backdrop to represent most of the plant and just have a few of the accessory structures out in the front that you actually model. So it's a really good way to do it. Jim Providenza, Santa Cruz Northern, he's got a cement plant. It's linear, but it's not straight. It's on a curve on his railroad. It's a shallow shelf, but he packs a lot of detail, a lot of piping and ducting and structures. You know, it really captures the feel of a very large cement plant, but doesn't eat up a ton of real estate. Really nice job on weathering those cars too. Really well used cement cars. Dave Stanley's Morada Belt Railroad, he's got a cement plant on it, and it's the Walters kit, but it's been kit bashed and made to fit his space. Doesn't take up a lot of real estate, but it captures the essence of what the cement plant is and provides some operation on his railroad. Looks really nice. Here's a prototype photograph that Keith Robinson had posted some years ago. Said his dad took this photo in 1963 from the top of the 16 silo mass. You can see the dust buildup on top of the buildings, the vents, louvers. You can see dust everywhere. And eventually, that's what I want to do with mine. Whenever I get my cement plant, all the structures mainly done, I'm going to come back over and dust all the structures, the trees, the ground, anything that's around it in dust. Because when you drive around and you look at a cement plant, there is dust everywhere. If you model a cement plant, though, you got a chance for some really unique motive power that you can use. Here we can see like a 70 tonner, a 45 tonner, a little 23 tonner, a Fairbanks Morris. A lot of secondhand locomotives can find their lives, their second life at a cement plant. But you can see some large locomotives, odd locomotives, a little bit of everything. It's not just left to the little critters. So there we go. I've taken in a lot of information. I've looked at a lot of stuff. Now what do I do with all this? I mean, I'm armed with a lot, almost to where it can be confusing. For me, it's part of a transportation system. It's going to add an operator during the session. It's on my railroad. There's going to be an interchange with the cement plant. I got lots of scratch building and kit bashing opportunities along the way. It is a focal point on a portion of my upper deck. It's going to fit my long and narrow shelf. And we've seen some of the other examples about a stub end and trailing track to get into. So I feel what I've coming up with can be very prototypical based on what I've seen. For traffic, we can have coal coming in for the power plant and hopper cars, gypsum and minerals and covered hoppers and hopper cars. We can have chemicals and fuel, possibly in tank cars coming in. We can have a possible flat car coming in with construction machinery. We can have box cars that are actually be bringing barrels and bags in, and empty box cars and covered hoppers to be loaded. So we got a lot of traffic that's going to be coming in. For going out, well, we're going to have bulk cement going out in covered hoppers. We're going to have a lot of box cars that are going to be going out with barrel and bag cement in them. We can also have some flat car loads going back out in machinery, maybe some old stuff that needs to be fixed. They sold off, they're getting rid of, or just empty flat cars leaving. Empty coal hoppers, and then the empty covered hoppers and hoppers from the gypsum and mineral track. And then empty random tank car that comes in or flat car that will be leaving. So it provides a lot of operation for the railroad. Like I said, the area that I got is linear. It's not very large, but it is N scale. So I've got a 99-foot, 6-inch length, 21-inch depth, and another leg that's 6 inches long, but it's only 10 inches deep. I've got the branch line that's going to run in front of the scene, and there will be a siding that are interchanged with the traffic. So I've eaten up a little bit of my real estate with where the track goes. But we're coming up with a plan. My want list, I wanted to have 2 bulk loading tracks for covered hoppers. I wanted 2 bagging tracks for box cars to go in and out. I needed a spur for the power plant, so we had a lot of coal coming in. I'd like to have a team track, so we got a place to unload that machinery and equipment. Need to have a track for some gypsum minerals coming in. Probably should have a place for my local storage or servicing track for it, because they have their own plant switcher. I don't want the railroad to be coming in here and switching it. and access to the siding for the runaround moves, but the locomotive would stay off the branch line. So if you remember the Humboldt trackage, it showed you got the trackage and then 2 railroads. You know, you have the plant switcher would stay on its own trackage. So I'd like to do that where I keep the switcher on his own track, and then there'd just be an interchange track where they'd have access to. And then I didn't want to do all trailing points, so I wanted 1 or 2 facing moves just for added operation. My railroad still isn't very big, and so I like to slow some operations down. So by throwing one of those in there, it makes them take a little bit longer to do the job. So real plants are very large and spread out. With a narrow shelf, the use of images on the backdrop or shallow restructures will maximize the area, yet still convey that it is a large and complex industry. The quarry won't be modeled. It'll be off in the distance. So this was my initial plan. I got a place where I could put a bagging plant. This would be the rotary kiln on the top. Power plant over here. This, I was thinking maybe a team track or an engine house or engine servicing, minerals, silos. This would be the plant trackage. It's got a tail track that comes all the way back down to the creek. And then there'd be an interchange track or the siding where we could actually interchange in between. You'll see that this one post is suspended from the wall that comes down that helps support this end. This is on the upper level of my layout. So this end of my layout is secured to the wall. This is against the wall. So I cantilevered this from the top going down, and I built a mountain over it to hide the support post that suspends that part of my layout. Well, how'd I do? So this is what I finally came up with. Pretty much met all my goals. The only thing I really don't have is a team track. But the reality is, team track can be any track. Anything that you can access, got a road next to, can be used as a team track. I could use this portion of the track. This is a grade crossing right here. That could be a team track. Back behind the road, between the rotary kiln and the silos, that could be used. Over here by the engine house, that could be used for a team track for unloading. So I really didn't lose. I just don't have a dedicated team track. But I did end up getting my bagging plant with 2 tracks that come into it. I've got my silos and my storage structure with 2 tracks. I got my gypsum and minerals coming in here. We got the power plant, and I went ahead and decided I wanted an engine house. I wanted someplace to keep the engines. And then the tail track for switching the plant. So I did pretty good. Took me a while though. I spent several weeks, if not months, using push pins and flex track and anything I could to represent different structures to figure out what would actually work. And then I would go up there and in my mind, I would switch this out in my head. All right, train comes in, does this. Until I finally got the trackage to where I felt it was captured the prototype feel, operated good, and would be enjoyable to operate. So here's an image a while later where I got all the track in. I still got stand-ins. You can see the support structure over here on the left that's supporting this end of my upper level. But at this point, we got all the trackage in. It was time to go ahead and start operating. Even without the structures, I wanted to make sure that because if it didn't operate well, now's the time to make the changes. Not after I get all the mountains in or start putting structures in. So we operated several times like this, and after I got some feedback from the guys that operated on it, I felt pretty comfortable with it. It was time to go ahead and start doing some scenery work. And so this is what it looks like today. Still not done. I still have not done the rotary kiln. It's the next structure that I need to finish. But you can see some of the signage and the structures and the overall feel of the plant. For the power plant, it was kit matched from the remains of a Walters Allied Rail Rebuilders kit. My friend Steve Newton had called me and said, "Hey, I got this one part of a structure. Do you have any use for it?" I was like, "Absolutely, I'll find a use for it." Put it on the shelf. So whenever I started laying this lot, I grabbed that structure and I was like, "Yeah, I can do this." It didn't have a back to the structure, but I didn't need the back. You're not going to see it. Years ago, Earl Smallshaw said, "Don't waste time on something people will never see." I agree to that. So on the back of it is just a piece of styrene painted red. So I got that structure all built and installed. I still need to put a covered unloading area for the coal and then add a bunch of conveyors and stuff. So the main plant and silos, I just use PVC pipes, cut them on my chop saw, and then I put styrene fillers between each of the silos, and I use styrene for the rooftop. The structure itself is a Walther's hardwood furniture kit that I cut, mangled, and reassembled, and what I felt looked like a decent structure. Whenever I got done, there was just a couple small pieces of scrap. There is no back to the structure either. If somebody's put a camera back there and take a picture, they'd be very disappointed. So the prototype for my inspiration came back to that photograph, one of those photographs that I took back in Victorville many years ago. But if you see the upper left, the picture here, it's at a different orientation than what works. So I reversed the image and the lower one just to see what it would look like. And I use that just kind of as a guide. Not that I try to model it specifically, but I just use it for my inspiration for putting mine together. And so I like the lines to it, and it captures the look of a very large structure. Still needs more details added to it, a little more weathering, but it's getting there. The backing plant was made using Walther's modular wall sections with a scratch-built loading dock from styrene. And here I'll have some piping coming into it because the piping from the cement will be shipped in through pipes, and then that'll be bagged and then it will be shipped out from there. The engine house, it also was built using modular wall sections. I came up with a little L-shaped structure, put it together, weathered it up, put it on the layout. Like I said, one of the next structures I need to do is a rotary kiln. I just got some stand-ins made from foam core and a piece of PVC pipe that I painted. The finished structure is going to be scratch built to fit the area. I'm not exactly sure if I'm going to stay. I just kind of copied the Walther's look, but as I look back through some of the other prototype photographs, like the San Andreas plant at Calaveras, I might come up with a little different structure. But there'll be a lot of piping and conveyors going all over the place. It'll really make the scene look busy. I do have a couple silos that are for the gypsum and minerals that come in. They're just stand-ins right now. It's just some plain PVC pipes. I'm probably going to cut them down just a little bit, put a walkway across the top, some ladders, some piping, and then a loading pit for them. So that'll pretty much finish that area off and should look pretty good. Some little details on the loading dock. I said a lot of bagged cement. Like I said, until recently, I didn't even think about barrels. So I'm gonna have to add some barrels to the scene also because we're gonna be shipping out by both barrel and bags occasionally. I like adding signs. I made up this sign here with Calaveras Cement, the Hastings plant. Put that at the front as from the road that's coming in, and you can see one of the yard limit signs. That's for the guy that's operating the plant switcher. He knows that's as far as he can take his switcher whenever he's operating. So on the backdrops, I painted the backdrop with acrylics. I added clouds just using the rattle can, spray paint, and stencils. The other background structures were scaled from photos that I download and cut out and attach to the backdrop to make it look like a lot bigger plant and add some depth to the scene. And this shows the two images. One was an image of a fairly modern or a cement plant that's been modernized. I didn't need all the modern stuff, so I cut a lot of that out in my photo program, and then I scaled them to what I wanted, and then I printed them out, cut them out, and affixed them to the backdrop. And the other one was this other postcard that I found, the Southwestern Portland Cement in El Paso, Texas. I like the look of it, kind of an older plant and the silos and stuff. And so I also printed that out, scaled it out as a background structure to be used. And there's where I took that El Paso one, and I stuck it on the right side, back behind the tail plant, because I've noticed a lot of times whenever you find a lot of rock, limestone stuff, there's usually more than one cement plant in the area. So I put a competing cement plant off into the distance to add some variety to the scene. So I need a coal conveyor and conveyor belts to go around, piping, miscellaneous ducting, dust everywhere. And here I've taken an old Alco and I've really dusted it up, and that's what I want the whole scene to eventually look like. So the operations at the plant, the Deep River Southern drops and picks up cars from the siding. They're not allowed onto the plant trackage. The plant switcher must stay on his own tracks and the joining siding. He's not allowed on the Deep River Southern track. And then for safety reasons, the switcher may only move cars coupled to one end of the engine. It's preferred not to move cars attached each end. Why? Yeah, we could, and we could speed up the operation. But like I said, I don't have a very big layout. And to slow the operations down, if you can only make your runaround move and push the cars in and then have to go run around and move them the other direction, it makes the operating session last a little bit longer instead of just rifling through and knocking it out and being done. This is just an overall view, kind of shows what I consider the Hastings plant. That's all the trackage that's included where the switcher has access to. This one purple track, it's kind of hard to see probably, is this one right here. This is the joint trackage. This is long enough for the engine to run out here and run around so that he can run around the cars and then get back into the plant. So recently, with the help of Speed, who came up to Tulsa and gave us a presentation on Arduinos, I started adding sound to the layout and into the scene. So it's not overpowering, but it sure adds another element whenever you're up there operating. So what we'll do now is we're just going to take a quick follow a train that's going to leave main yard at Beckton and then take the train all the way up to where the cement plant is. Really appreciate the NMRA and Speed for inviting me to come give this presentation. I hope that you all find some information that's useful to you. But before we go, I would like to put a shameless plug in. Part of the Indian Nations Division here in the Tulsa area. We're going to be holding our 10th Layout Design and Operations Weekend in March here in Tulsa. We have a web page. It will be updated here soon, where you can go online and register. Registration is still only $40. We haven't changed that since 2017. That includes catered lunch, and there's an opportunity for 3 op sessions. We have 16 great layouts in our area, and we've got 5 presenters: Eric Hansman, prototype inspiration for manageable size layouts; Rich Gibson, prototype modeling of the 1951 MEC, mixture of accuracy, guesswork, and compromise; Doug Tagsgold, design and operation, the 132nd Scale Colorado Southern Clear Creek Division; Richard Frazier, the future of model railroading; and Doug Tagsgold is also going to do modeling the railroads of Toledo, Ohio, a lesson on research, design, and operations. So I'd like to say thank you for that.
Jacob, you there?
Yep. So now we're going to move on to the questions segment. So Dave, what was the earliest cement plant of this design?
Honestly, I don't know.
Have other industries ever been on the same track as a cement company?
That's a good question. I have no idea. Most of the ones I've seen are standalone. Not to say that there couldn't be another industry, but most of the ones that I've seen or researched are all just standalone cement plants.
So what era are you modeling?
I'm modeling 1958. Kind of the transition era.
So what do you use to control your trains? DCC or
Yeah,
DC?
well, Speed will tell you, I'm digitally challenged. I'm still DC.
Nice. So this is kind of 2 questions. So how big is the Cavaliers? Sorry if I mispronounced that cement sign, and how did you make it?
The Calaveras cement sign is approximately probably 3/4 of an inch by 1.5 inches. And I just went into my, I use Paint Shop Pro as an old program that I've used for years. And I just went in there and rescale. I took, if you remember in the beginning, whenever I showed the pictures of the bridge, there is a picture of a Calaveras sign that I downloaded off the internet. So I started with that and resized it down to fit on the size of the sign, and then just put in the lettering and scaled it to what I wanted, printed it out on paper, and then adhered it to a piece of thin cardstock, and then some basswood supports.
Nice. I actually have a similar sign for a mill that's going to be on my land, so I'm probably going to use that.
Great.
What size of PVC pipe did you use for the silos?
Boy, that's going back a few years. I'm thinking those are 2-inch PVC pipes, but don't hold me to it.
Could there be enough operations in a cement plant for a permanent operator position?
I think it could. For mine, it's my operator right now operates the branch line. Half of it is spent time doing the cement plant, and half of it run the branch line. If it was a little bit larger, yeah, it definitely could keep you busy all day.
What would be a very simple cement plant to model, considering that somebody might have space limitations?
I think the easiest thing to do is you can just put a couple sidings or spurs in with a facade of some silos and a plant, and have cement hoppers coming in, and you can do another structure. I think it was Rob Spanglehead on the WP 8th subdivision. He's got a really shallow cement plant, but it's got a lot of operation to it, and he did exactly that.
How are you planning on applying dust onto your layout?
I'm literally just going to take some acrylic in my airbrush, and I'm just going to overspray everything with some white, and then go back over and clean the track afterwards.
Yeah. Do you know why it's called the Portland Cement Company?
Because of the process. That's the process of making that cement it's called Portland Cement. I don't remember where it came from.
Yeah. Do you know how long it takes to build a real cement plant?
No, I don't.
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't have a lot of answers.
No, you're doing great. Well, I think that's all of our questions. So,
Okay,
yeah, thank you for being with us today, Dave.
absolutely. Appreciate the opportunity.
Okay. Well, thanks, Jacob, for that, and thanks, Dave. I think we found the next Dave. We've got one guy, Dave Berman, who gave us grain all the way from the fields to a packet of chips or crisps on your snack bar, and we've now got one that's given us cement all the way from the gravel right through to just about laying bricks, I suppose. But that was really interesting. Okay, just a reminder to everyone, we've got a chat room happening over in MRL-Aussies. I'll put my teeth in and be able to speak properly in a minute. So if you guys want to head over there, Dave's going to head over there. There's a group already set up with his name in it. So if you've got any more questions about cement or the process and transportation of, or his layout, I thought that was quite neat. You've got quite a bit of operations just in one area of your layout there. So yeah, and we'll be back in a little while with our next clinic, I guess.
Appreciate it, and you have a Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Boy, doesn't a bucket of chicken sound good right now? This is Tony Cook, the co-editor of HO Collector Magazine. If you're enjoying this NMRAX presentation, remember to subscribe to the channel and click the little bell icon, and then you'll receive updates whenever there's new content out. Thanks for viewing.